When I first joined the order, my novice master preached a retreat. It was our Vestitian retreat. So the retreat before we received the beautiful habit of the Dominican order. And the novice master gave us a list of virtues, and it makes a little acronym. Grace. He wanted our lives as Dominicans to be lives of grace. And for the novice master, that meant being generous, responsible, attentive, compassionate, and engaging. It might surprise you, I didn't have any problem with the last one, engaging. I once asked my mom what my first words were, and she laughed and said she doesn't remember because it was a paragraph. So that one wasn't an issue. Pretty responsible, friendly guy, generous, okay, all the rest. The virtue that I have found myself struggling with in an intense way in religious life is compassion. Religious life is supposed to be a school for compassion, and yet, if I'm being very honest with you as I am, I would prefer that religious life were a school of justice. That is for everyone but me, of course. I want compassion. But what I want to extend is not compassion, it's to extend justice. And why is that? Well, it's because that being compassionate, as Christ was compassionate, requires such a change in us. It requires such a change in us. I love the story of the journalist Malcolm Muggeridge, who goes to serve with Mother Teresa. And he says what he first experienced alongside Mother Teresa, the great foundress of the Missionaries of Charity, he said what he first experienced was horror at the sight of the poverty and suffering he saw. And then he felt pity, which is the kind of beginning of compassion. And then he realized a third movement was taking place, that he was being bound up in what everyone was suffering. You see, for Mother Teresa, it wasn't simply that she had a kind of horror or hatred even of the evil of suffering and the condition that people experienced. It wasn't even that she had a kind of pity, lowering herself, making great acts to serve them, but it was that she was really in it, that she was offering something of herself to those people. You know, this word itself, maybe you've heard it explained. Compassion means to suffer with someone. Compassio, to suffer with someone. And true compassion in our lives means we have to really pour ourselves out. But not just as we would want to, but as Christ himself did. In the Passion, we find many examples of people who are following Christ's witness in this way. Think, of course, of the great Simon of Cyrene, who is pressed into service, who ends up carrying the cross of Christ. And you might say, well, should we make a big deal of this guy? You know, he didn't even choose this path. It was chosen for him. Well, my answer is yes, absolutely we should. Because who suffered with Christ? How could someone have carried Christ's cross and not have really suffered with him? How could that be possible? And in fact, I think there's a little bit of evidence from the scriptures that Simon was really changed by this, because his sons are named. Simon of Cyrene, we're told, the father of Alexander and Rufus. Why do we know Alexander and Rufus? Perhaps, friends, it's because they were known to the early church. Maybe Simon was converted. Maybe his sons were too. Isn't that an extraordinary thing to think of? Or think of this woman, Veronica, who, according to tradition, ran out to wipe the face of Christ. This isn't in the scriptures, but I think it's such a noble tradition. Some commentators, some fathers in the early church, thought of Veronica as the woman who was cured from the flow of blood. Imagine she being one who suffered so much, running out to respond to Christ in his suffering. She who reached out just to touch the tassel of his cloak, offering a different cloth to Christ, wiping his holy face, offering him just a little compassion. Or finally, think of the slave Malchus. Malchus was the last miracle, the last physical miracle that Christ performed on this side of eternity. Malchus, the slave whose ear Peter cut off. Christ looked upon him with compassion and healed him in the garden, just as his suffering was going to begin. Compassion is key to Christian life. It's not just one of the 5 virtues my novice master wanted to have for Dominican novices, but it's a way of expressing what it means in the most fundamental way to follow Jesus. Do not simply have horror at the evils and sufferings we see on this side of eternity. To not simply have pity for them, trying to remedy that suffering or to respond to it, but ultimately to enter into it as Christ did, and in so doing to give of ourselves and be changed.